scruffy little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends. Bring your creativity, forget what we will bring. Drawing, breathing, bringing all new worlds into being.
Good evening, everybody. I hope that you can hear me. We were just getting a little, some technical difficulties, and let me know if the comments you can hear me. I'm going to be a bit of a faceless head tonight, and tonight we're going to be working on some mountains. So, okay, audio is good. Fantastic. Thank you, Jared. Hi, Neetha. So, tonight we're going to be working on mountains, and so I brought an extra piece of paper to kind of talk through how I'm going to do that. One of the things with mountains, hey T, how's it going? So the thing with mountains are cool, right? Mountains are crazy. But one thing we're going to be playing around with is that mountains often follow a line along with each other that's then cut up by the mountains themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a crazy line like this. All right, we've got that. Now on this is basically the mountain ridge that every mountain is going to follow along. So when I take a mountain and I just draw like this, I can then draw another mountain that in general is going to follow the same ridge line. And I might have a little mountain right here and a large mountain right here. So that's what we're going to be doing when we draw our mountains. Sometimes you'll come back and redo this ridge line. So I can come back here at the top and have it instead disappear underneath the edge and then have this bit. So it's not going to be an exact follow because you want there to be some offset in your mountains. Like this one here, this curve is too big. So we might come in here and erase that line and have it go off in a different direction because there's actually another mountain over here that picks up where that ridge was removed. And maybe right through here is a pass that allows people to get through. So I might just mark it with some pencil to say I wanted to later show that there's a road that goes through here. Anyway, I wanted to show this kind of in large detail before I start putting it onto our map. That's a little preview of what we'll be working on. So first, I thought I'd make sure you guys all got to see where we're at with our Jormungandr map. So we've got it right here. Here, remember last week we have the head and the gizzard, and then the body, and the spine goes through here and comes to our original piece that we started with, which is kind of our hips. Down here, since last week, I've added a claw, and all along here, tail that terminates up here. There may be other little islands we'll add as we go, but now we have all of our basic land masses, and we can begin working on some mountains and then rivers. So right here, we've got this place that we grade out as our portion for our mountains. So I'm going to go in. It's one of the reasons we do things in pencils is so that we can then go in and erase it and make the lines even lighter. So somewhere to work that doesn't feel like we're distracting ourselves with previous markings. And this is going to be a mountain range. Maybe it's going to be a bit of a mountain mass. We can see here where it's thinner. That's a great place to put just a range. So I'm going to start right here in the middle, and we can from here branch out into some other mountains. So we'll start right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and start with a mountain. Just a little peak, and I'm going to give it that ridge I was talking about. And remember, so I drew earlier just a ridge and followed that. You can also just draw each mountain and have that ridge continue itself. So it's still following the same ridge, and you just can't see it in the perspective of the mountain. And these are two very big mountains. So I'm going to start we're going to assume that these are just two giant mountains, and we'll start making some smaller mountains that are part of the same group. And I'm just going to kind of meander my way down through my ridge. We might decide that this spot right here is just really inaccessible and steep. So why don't we throw some more mountains in? Happy mountains, happy mountains. Like there's got a nice mass of mountains here that nobody's going around. Nobody's going to go through. They're going to have to go around. And, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Just get in there, because a lot of it you're going to detail when you go into working it later with ink. Right now you're just trying to figure out where those mountains are. You can always add more. I know, add, you know, different types of mountains. Like right here, yeah, right here, we're going to put kind of a, maybe a bit of kind of a lonely mountain. It's going to have a nice big peak here at the top, but then it's going to spread out as a mountain that is seen from both the lake and the sea. It's going to have multiple peaks, multiple ridges that all lead down to maybe different glacial basins, and it feeds off to another mountain. All right, so we've got a bit of a mountain range right here. It could be that maybe right up here we do some hills instead, so that people can pass through to this other land. We haven't decided that yet. But now that we have mountains, we can start determining exactly where we want our rivers to go. So all mountains, especially here where we talked about how in the first episode that water is going to go in the air through here until it hits the mountain, and the precipitation is going to force it back down, which means that water is going to be flowing back towards the water. So we have to decide here in this coast, where do we want our outlets to be? Probably right here. This almost kind of looks like a San Francisco Bay area. So we know there's a river here. Might be another river here, but we're going to send this one farther south. And this lonely mountain has a lot of runoff. It likes to come down this plain here. So I'm just showing some short rivers, because rivers almost always, and by almost always I mean the vast majority of the time, are going to gather as they head towards the coast. Oh. They are going to gather. The only time that a river will split before it goes out is where there is a tidal plain, where the water can rise and the water can go down, and while it's up, or maybe in an earlier period of time, it was risen up and then dropped down and rose up again, and so now there is a mass of land that sits between a place where a river splits and sends off, or maybe, you know, a man-made as well. So this river we've got here, maybe it does come from the mountains, but maybe it's a really wide river, because this is just the last tributary, and it's fed from other lands beyond, or maybe even another mountain range. And if we're going to put some hills in here, the hills can also provide it means, or force it to go around things like that. Now I got a nice hilly river area that comes from these new mountains we're going to put right up here. So when you're putting mountains and your rivers together, they play off of each other. The types of mountains they are, it's going to determine exactly how much runoff it has. Is this a jungle mountain or a rocky mountain? It's all going to rid itself of water eventually. It's just a matter of whether it is going to hold water as well, like in a rainforest, because we've got all this water flowing here. This here, we said, actually I've got a mark here that this is forest. This is hilly and foresty. This could very well be almost like a Congo basin of jungles. Down here in the plains, because we've split the rivers to go off and around them, maybe there's a lot of rain here, but there's not a lot of trees. Maybe this river here, while very short, has a lot of runoff, and it takes all the water away, and also because it's wide prevents trees from crossing them. If these are exceptionally steep mountains, trees will have an even harder time propagating around the top of the river and into this plain. So that's an excuse for us to put a plain here. All right, so we've got some mountains here. We've got another mass of mountains here. And we've got some great spots for potential civilizations as well. Humanity is going to find the easiest place to settle. Later on, it might find that the place it settled is not nearly as easy as they thought it was, but they're going to try to live somewhere where they can make and eke out an easy living and work at it from there. So the fact that this is forest, there might not be a civilization here, but just north of here, where the water is able to continue and go around the mountains, this coast might be a fantastic spot for a civilization, given the fact that there's a rainforest right here, may dictate that it is constantly encroaching on the civilization. So it might be a coastal only civilization. All right, so we've got our mountains right here. Let's finish our mountains down south of what we called the Lonely Mountain here. And I'm going to switch to a thinner pencil. What is everybody working on tonight? That's okay. I mean, if your mountains look like blood vessels, that's not a bad thing. Play with that. And you know what? They're going to look a lot different too once you start adding shading too. So there, I marked that this is probably a good place, Anitha, for a forest to sit. And because it's very short from here to the mountains, that can cause additional rain. And because of additional rain, it just becomes a very wet, whether temperate or jungle rainforest, just due to the fact that there's so much water that's going to be coming in and coming back through it. Obviously, you can have other rainforests that are much wider, like the Amazon River Basin, but part of that has to do with the fact that there's so much water coming towards the Andes Mountain from that side, and coming from over the Andes Mountain on the other side, that it ends up just contributing a ton of water to make it just always rain. And a rainforest kind of begets a rainforest in that it is letting off a lot of water for precipitation or for evaporation, and then precipitating that same water right back on itself too. So if it's hot and muggy, just the fact that it's muggy can be enough to kind of perpetuate it. So T, with the with Kate's map, that it looks like a blood vessel is not a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of what it is, right? It's what binds the continent together, and having rivers and mountains look like blood vessels just shows that the land itself has an organic nature to it. And then as you continue to work on the same map, it may become more like that and be part of a story, or it may be less like that as you start to define exactly how craggy is it going to look like. I've just been doing domed mountains, but you can just as easily have very rocky mountains that have just tons of ridges and just look entirely impassable. So you have to decide with your map how much you want to indicate. Do you want it to be a very do you want it to be very detailed, or is it just a key to the story that you're telling? um, and there's going to be, as we start to get into inks too, there's a lot of little things you can do to add little details. Like I like to, on the coast, add ripples that look like there's water coming in, maybe in an area that has a really wide or really long beach. You have the ripples go out really far to show that there's a lot of shoals in the area, and other places where it's very tight and quick. So there's lots of little things that you can do to add details that make it feel more mappy. And a lot of that just comes with practice. Nothing we do is ever perfect the first time. Just like a first draft of a book, we have to keep working at it. And if we don't want our maps to look like blood vessels, then we just keep drawing it. But you got to punt that. You got to punt that voice on your shoulder telling you what you do isn't good, because it doesn't know what it's talking about. Imposter syndrome is real, and we all suffer from it. But that doesn't mean it's so real that it actually knows what it's talking about, because it doesn't. All right, so we've got our lake over here. I'm going to start adding a little bit of detail to the coast, even without rice. Hi, Tori. So you don't have the rice was just there to kind of give you a chaotic edge, but you can just as easily just let your hand wander. One of my favorite things to draw in college was lightning, and to just let the pencil move around and give you a more organic coast. So right here, I did write a note to have this be a big swamp. So what we might do is we might go ahead and open up this river and turn it into a delta. So I'm just going to do some erasing here. I'm going to lay out that I want it to be maybe about this wide, nice big delta. And basically the idea is that a delta, the river ends here, even though the coast is going to be along right here. And then we can just start drawing islands. I'm going to leave a lot of space for water in between, so that later we can show the flow of water entering into the marshland, the delta marshland. Jared, I think it's kind of a mix. sometimes I'll have, it also depends on the scale of the map, right? If this is, I don't think actually, it's hard to even tell how big this particular world is. Maybe this is a really small world. Maybe this is, it's kind of like, when you draw like a serpent on a map, it's don't go here, there be dragons, is because maybe there's just bad shoals that are going to destroy a ship. So at times you might have a mountain that is very obviously a mountain for that area, that a Mount Edo, but the rest of the range might not be exactly the thing. If you really wanted to get nitty gritty, that doesn't mean you couldn't have a map where you say, I'm going to name every single mountain and show every mountain like it's the middle of the Rocky Mountains, and show every single peak. That's fine. But do you have space to do that on your map, or does everything need to be a suggestion that there's a mountainous area? Just like you could, obviously trees are an even better example. Once we get into forests are not going to be every single tree, right? It's just a suggestion that, by the way, this right here is arboreal, this right here is evergreen, this right here is bamboo jungle. So it's really up to you how much you want to convey. You're not making any major promises. You're just giving an area, an idea of where people are traveling in your story. All right. Not the best delta I've drawn, but it's fun. So we've got a delta right here. All right, let's continue along. Kind of excited to get done with this dragon's face, but I do want to finish this. It's very interesting here that there's two land masses now that are very close to each other. Which means there's probably going to be some animosity between the two nations that might exist on each side. Exactly. T, you are more than welcome to map. You can write, draw, turn on Lord of the Rings.
Not yet.
And yes, that is the sound of Trisha making tea right now.
Sorry.
I started it and then had to jump online, and she's sugaring and milking our tea. What's everybody drinking tonight? Yeah, it's going to take a lot for me to catch up to Alan. What's he at? I think somebody estimated he's at like 40 days worth of watch hours. Be right back. Yeah, nobody can match Alan's energy. Always important to stay hydrated, Jared. You never know when dehydration is going to hit. All right, so we've got our initial landmass here. We need to decide if there's going to be any other mountain ranges that are going to feed our tributaries. Because it'd be really hard if we don't have. Yeah, we're going to have to put something here. Because if you think about it, here we've got a lake, got a jungle we want over here. The water that goes through the clouds going over these mountains is going to have some runoff off the back here, which means we'll probably have some in fact, this might even just be a desert. But a big lake is pretty enticing for a civilization. So let's put a mountain range right in here and a big mass of mountains right here to feed our little jungle over here. All right, so got some mountains there now. All right, so now we can give us some rivers. The rivers are going to need to both go to the lake and out here. So let's have a river here. And we'll do a river here. We can give it lots of rivers. And then some of the runoff is going to come this direction into our lake. But that can't be the only river that comes into this lake, so let's just let's feed this lake. It's really not important to show every single river, just the important ones. But they do border different potential nations. All right, I think that's pretty good. Let's let's one more mountain group up here, and then we're gonna go work on the dragon's head. All right, that's good. Let's get over here to Draco. So last week we kind of indicated that there was going to be some mountains here, which would kind of look like the cheekbones, or even the beginning of the jawbone here of this dragon that's fallen. So let's put some mountains in there. We talked about ridges. They're a little harder to do when you're going sideways. So you just kind of got to make it up. I left a bit of a gap right here. That way we can have some valleys people can live in. That's okay. Your mountains are moving the way that they need to move. And if that means that they are running east to west, that's fine. That's going to create some very different biomes than the north-south of, say, North and South America, right? And if you look at some of the kind of interesting mountain formations of Earth, like the Himalayas, which are more of a mass, they still follow lines, but those masses are going to have different effects on the world around them. Not all mountain ranges run north and south, and that's great. It is more important that you're placing the mountains where you need them to be for your story. Sometimes vice versa. If you start with a map and then go from there, like Jormungandr map here, it's going to do its own thing, and it's going to form. Nations are going to form based on the terrain of the land. But sometimes you need a culture that you say, hey, I need this culture to be a desert culture, so I need a desert right here. So you can just plop a desert in there, or you can say, how can I make sure that this is as deserty as desert is, and lock off all the moisture from the sea, or have the air just never get there. There's one desert up in the mountains of the Andes in South America that hasn't had more than like 14 centimeters of rain in 100 years. And it's an isolated desert. It's still kind of dry up there, but for whatever reason, that particular valley just doesn't get water. The water goes right past it, but it's still there. It's just not falling. So you have to ask yourself, how can you control your precipitation? In the mouth of Jormungandr here, what is going to happen here? Is there going to be a draw? Is there going to be a draw of moisture that comes in here and just bypasses all this, or rains as it goes? Mountains like to sometimes cause rain, but sometimes if the clouds are flowing this way, these portions of the mountains may get wet, and by the time it hits the later mountains, it goes completely dry. That's what happens in Nevada, North America. Is Northern California is absorbing so much moisture on the coastal Sierra range that by the time it gets to the Nevada, it just doesn't have any moisture left. So how can you control that weather and make it do what you want it to do? And as long as you're drawing a pencil, your eraser is your friend. You can always go in and erase something, and then once you like how it looks, you ink it. Next week we'll probably end up working on some forests, talking about different ways that we can draw forests. Or we'll work on forests. Probably after that we'll start even inking the coast. I like to get the coast inked before I really nail down and do the whole rest of the world, because then it just makes you feel like you've been accomplishing something, getting that coast nice and black. But that doesn't mean that you have to. It's also because I'm a lefty. I'm constantly dragging my hand through the graphite with the pencil, and so everything smears. So whenever I can take a break from penciling and ink it, means that I'm not smearing as much. Kind of isolated valley right here between the mountains. All right, so we had this eye here, the eye socket that was going to be a lake. We'll give it a nice big river that connects to this other cavity, its nose. Does anybody have any exciting plans this week that you're going to be delving into, whether it's a new project or a book you're reading? I just started the draft on my 4th Collation saga book. I'm about 6,000 words in to what will probably be a little bit longer than the first 2 books, and longer than the 3rd book too, but the 3rd book is not out yet, so we can't really be talking about that, can we? But I can say there will be quite a bit of resolution in book 4. It's not the end of the series by no means, but I have a lot of loose ends to tie up. And that does not fill me with dread. It fills me with a lot of hope. Oh, I heard that one's pretty good. The author does like to make lists of 3. What's 4 scored, Patricia? Yeah, I've announced the title. That's the name. That's the title of the sequel of Thrice. My wife is turning beet red, thinking that she just spoiled something she wasn't supposed to talk about. Married authors' lives. Ah, you must have just met the Umernosti. They're a religious sect that swears that they don't believe that there's any religion, but they do follow simple tenets and simple lives. We'll get you into Thrice here pretty soon, T, because you've just read the Collation Saga, right? If I remember correctly. I can't look at my phone to double check and not look like a fool. And random words you don't know is how you know you're in a fantasy. So for the nose ridge here, I'm going to add some little craggy mountains that aren't very tall, but are just rough looking. Like a pachycephalosaurus, which is a real word. I actually may have gotten that name wrong, but you know, the hard-nosed dinosaurs that have the big heads that they smash into each other, make them look like that. Nice crags like this might be a place where a semi-arid civilization might live, like Petra. Or the Apache. I like that. Anita, are you just trying to get T to tell you if all your favorite characters are going to die or not? End of book 2 is just literally a reset. The whole world dies and Dane is the last man in the whole world. No. I have too many lessons left to teach Dane. Whether he'll listen is a question. I mean, who doesn't want to hang out with somebody with superiority complex, right? Dane knows he's the best. He wants everybody else to know it. All right. So I'm going to put some softer mountains down here on the jaw because I've kind of drawn all these little jagged features that indicate this might be kind of like a Norwegian fjords. So I want it to look like there's just mountains rising up out of the fjords but are still forested and not craggy. That'll get you some views for sure, Anita. Convince the world that the worst character is the best character. You know, I don't know. I just kept going. The mountains kept forming. But there is enough coast along here. There could be a lot of really hard, really, really different. Well, like here I said fjords. This could be a bit of a Viking culture. And since we're calling it at this point Jormungandr, that would make sense. That there's a big old nasty Viking culture from which they raid all the good people of the other lands. And then up here, they might have their farmlands that, or they're combating. If there's Vikings along these coasts here, and up here in the crags, there's more of a desert culture. Maybe they're constantly fighting just within this area here. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe they're all mountain dwellings. Maybe it's all dwarves. Who doesn't like a whole continent of dwarves, right? All right, let's see. Let's work on the gizzard. Yeah, exactly. They could be all cliff dwellings. We're going to put one mountain range down the center of this that's going to split two lands. And for fun, we're going to call this land Verona. The mountain range that splits the two houses that are in constant turmoil. So one of the best ways I have found is to look at other maps that you find online. When you're trying to show different types of mountains, just adding more edges and just letting it go crazy is going to be one thing. And you can also just cut things off. I mean, you could very easily show a crag here and then pick up another mountain on this side and then draw bits and cliffs and edges that have a lot of the Let's see if we can get this a little closer. So you can have short mountains like this. Have some boulders. A mesa would look something like, give it a flat top, give it a plateau, and then lots of runoff. That's probably a little too much, but and you can also separate them so they aren't running along with each other. So let's take it up here to this spot right up here. It just feels like lava rises. It indicates that people could move in them, but it's going to be dangerous road. Plenty of snakes or dragons. Both. Flying snake pterodactyls. Who knows? And once you start playing with hills, let's do some hill lands down here. Hills are easy, right? It's just a curve. But is it a grassy knoll? Does it eventually become sub-Saharan, where it's a bit more dune-like? It follows kind of the same rules as a mountain, but it has the waves of the sand. If you want an area that has a really long cliff, you could very easily just draw yourself a line and then draw some hatching straight down and then close it off on the other side. So you know down here there's a crevice. Like that. Get a little closer. Like that. And you see a lot of maps that will do things like that in isolation. And if that's the focus you want to go for, totally do it. Other times you can use the terrain around it to indicate its uniqueness. So by drawing, oh, that's not good. Sorry, camera's being weird. No, that's weird. Okay, so by having this cliff here and then drawing more mountains around it and above it, shows that it's a crack in the land. You can even have peaks of the mountain cover over the other edge of that crevice. This crevice may run for a while. It may just look like a river at some point, and from here we can have smoke, which might indicate that it comes from or is feeding towards a volcano. Or a group of volcanoes. Maybe on this dragon, this right here is where it was smoked. And this crack is a cut that goes to its very heart, which provides a little food for storyline. And maybe in a group of adventurers decide to go into the very heart of the dragon himself. Whoops, sorry guys. So, as always, I would love for you all to post your maps and what you're working on right now anywhere you can on social media, from Twitter to Instagram. Love to see how your maps are coming as we begin to conclude our Sunday evening map session. Next week, like I said, we'll probably work on some forests and start filling in some of the areas. Probably put some more hill areas. Start talking about how we can indicate very detailed forests or indicate forests with an area, or even putting conifers up near the mountains. So we'll be doing that next week. So before I log off, I know it really did, Jared. The hour just flows by every time, doesn't it? So how is everything going for everybody? You having fun? Is this helping out? Giving you a chance to reset and prepare for the week? And like I say, if you get a chance, post what you're working on online, and we can all encourage each other and continue to make our happy little Map-ccidents together. You're welcome to keep chatting there in the live chat. Keep going. There's no reason to stop. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that I can let you know when the next session will be going up. It is always good to take a good chance to just sit down and unwind and draw and reset yourself before Monday hits you like a freight train. But that's not till tomorrow. So until then, like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and try to get a good night's sleep tonight so you are ready to go for the coming week. Have a great week, guys. And keep making lots of happy little Map-ccidents.
Happy little Map-ccidents with happy little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends. Bring your creativity, forget what week will bring.